it's really important, for us, and something we stand pretty proud on, is that we've always been a systems company, and that our engineering, that our support, and that our equipment has been designed from that point of view all the way through from the beginning. Yeah, it was in October 2001 that I founded Imperial Systems. When we take our first call, initially we'll start out talking to the engineer, maybe the owner, and it's always my priority to talk to the operator along that process. The operator is the one that on a daily basis runs the machine. They know what the real problems are, where they stand in relationship to the fume or dust. If the operator's happy and has some input along the way, that the operator makes the system work better in the long run. So it's key, and it's just part of our approach. When you design a system from the beginning, and you are personally responsible for it, now the dust collector becomes just a small portion of the overall system. But the problem is, as soon as you connect ductwork to it, you take into account for velocities, you take into account for hood capture, those are the things that actually make the system work. The system itself, the dust collector, can work well or work poorly based on the system design. For several years when I started, I was a rep for a large European dust and fume collection company. And, they're a good company, good people, early days, had a lot of fun. But early on, the industry used to have a term they'd throw around called filling holes. And this was the practice of selling dust collectors that were undersized in order to get the job, regardless of how long the filters lasted. And would the systems work well to begin with? Absolutely they would. But after 6 months, and shortly after, the filters would start to plug up and the customer would just be stuck with that product. And I just never really felt good about that. It didn't work with who I was and what we were doing. With that being said, I think that at some point in time it made sense for us to get into building a vertical style dust and fume collector.
I think it was about 2009, you said, and it kind of came out of the blue, like, I think we're gonna start building cartridge collectors. And we started down the road of planning what that was gonna look like, and it was everybody in the plant late one night putting this thing together because it had to ship the next morning, and we were all learning from our experiences of starting to build this thing.
There's a lot of good stories behind that first collector we built. Our first vertical style cartridge collector was, for all intents and purposes, a direct copy of our competition, and it was, in the end, we found that it was a mistake to do that because it really didn't give us any differentiators or make us a whole lot different. But that's what we did, and that's kind of part of our history. But I remember when we did that, the amount of bolt holes that collector had in it, and the amount of bolts. I mean, it was like a 5-gallon bucket of bolts for a 24 cartridge dust collector. And I'll never forget, the bolt holes weren't lining up properly, and they after the collector was installed, we went to go visit the customer, and the customer came back and handed me, 3 crescent wrenches and a bucket full of bolts and said, we found this up in the clean air plenum. You're not getting the tools back, but you can have the old bolts back. So, those are lessons learned, at an early age. You start a business, and I think that what happened to us, being young into business at the time and into some products, was that, what we learned through the process is that we really couldn't differentiate ourselves, and the fact that we had another Me Too collector. And so the problem with a Me Too collector is that you basically, you can lay 2 quotes on a table, and the customer's going to say, why would I buy from you when I can buy from another brand that's well more known and has a name in the industry, and so the only thing you really got going for you at that point is price. So that was a very tough lesson that we learned early on.
I think it's important that we talk about how we listened to what our customers said, and they made suggestions, and we were open to hearing those suggestions, because if we weren't open to hearing those suggestions, we wouldn't have come up with the ideas maybe to make ours better and to make the changes that we made and to set ourselves apart, because what we found is that we were improving upon problems that our competitors might have been having, and we were open to making the changes. And as a small company, we were able to do that, and that's kind of gotten us to the point where we are now with the design of the C-Max.
And it was at that point where we said, let's change the air header. Let's make the air header slightly different. And so we came out with a new air header with manifold mount valves that was a quieter, better functioning. It took less PSI, it took less air consumption, and it made us better. And so it was at that point where we said, boy, that's nice. You know, now we have something that is better, but it also looks different on paper. It looks different to the customer. There's an advantage. And so I think that's when the idea was born that our strength is in our differences. And from that point, we've never really looked back. So when we had a chance to change the door, we didn't just change the door to make it look different. We made a change on the door to make it better. The most significant change we made over the years with the C-Max is the elimination of the bolt holes. And with that, you remember, we had that customer in Florida that had the water standing on the roof, and we had all those bolt holes on the roof, and the customer said, why don't you just weld the roof solid? I'm like, well, we can't weld the roof solid because it's a modular design. They said, well, if you still made the side panels where you could unbolt them and put them back on, then you could still be modular. Well, that's a good point. I never thought about that. So why don't we do that? So that was when we first developed the fully welded modular roof, which was the first of its kind. After eliminating all the bolt holes, we got into, our door was the first door in the industry to actually have no internal ledges on it. So when you open the dust collector door up, you don't have a pile of dust fall on your feet or down on the workers below you. That was one of the big innovations that we made. More recent one we did was, we developed the first ever anti-ramping lift rails, where when you slide the filters in, the other filters can't slide up on top of them. So that's truly protecting the safety and the health of the workers, because if you've got a filter in there that is not seated properly, you could have toxic fumes or dust go by and hurt somebody. So we're pretty proud of that. The innovation of the domed roof crown technology is pretty exciting. No rain, no dust build up on top of it. That we felt pretty comfortable coming out with the first ever 15-year warranty on a dust collector, because we just knew that with that innovation that there's no way you could see any leaks in the collector. So we always felt pretty strong about that new design change, and just a lot of good things coming out of this plant.
The word got out that we were listening to what people were saying, and we were fixing problems that they were having, and it really spread by word of mouth.
Yeah, it really was the new beginning for us. The C-Max really is the most innovative dust and fume collector on the market. It really holds true to our mission statement, which is to improve the health, safety, and quality of people's lives by building the best dust and fume collector on Earth. How do you guys feel about that mission statement?
I'm excited to be a part of it. I think we have a very good product, and we've spent a lot of focus on innovations to stand us apart across the industry.
We built a dust collector so that people who work, people who have families, people who have children, people who have wives or husbands, they go home at the end of the day as healthy as they were when they showed up at the beginning of their day. And I take a lot of pride in knowing that I'm helping make workplaces across the country safer for people, that their lives, the quality of their life is better because of a piece of equipment that's made here in Mercer, Pennsylvania, and that means a lot to me.
All this said today, we've talked about, I can't really tell the story without talking about my granddad and how it all started. So for me, it's all I remember from an early age. We spent our summers in the sheet metal shop. My brother and I, my cousins, my family, my mom, my dad. We were all in a family business, and My granddad, super, super loving man while he was running a business, also had us grandkids running around the place, in the offices and the property. I always wanted something to do, and so a funny story I remember, my granddad asked me to go in there and slag parts, so after they were cut, the parts where they'd need descaled or slagged. And I didn't want to do that job, I wanted to be rolling ductwork or welding, and he obviously knew better than I did and knew that I was too young to be doing that. But I remember throwing a fit and crying, and actually went out in the field next to the shop and was hiding, and he came and looked for me. So he and I just didn't want that junk job, I wanted to be right there in the mix, right in the heart of it. And that was early days of growing up around that type of environment. I can remember a lot of Christmas gatherings, getting together at Thanksgiving. There would always be the guys talking about shop talk, and so I can just remember always wanting to kind of be part of that conversation and always kind of creeping into that conversation and asking questions and just kind of listening generally. Today's really no different. Today I still love talking about fabrications. I could talk about it nonstop. I do talk about it with my kids, and they understand it as much as they can at 9 and 10 years old, but I bring them into the shop some. It's great. I still love walking into a fabrication shop. No matter where I'm at, I still always learn something. Every single time I walk into a fab facility, whether it's a woodworking facility, a plastic facility, a metalworking facility, I still learn something every time I go into one. I think we're at a pivotal point right now in Imperial Systems. I think the future is super bright. We've just hired a new sales and marketing director. We've restructured our sales team. With that, more important than anything, is we have service max now. We refuse to grow at a rate that we can't service our customers. And we've seen where a lot of people have failed big time with that. Some of our current competition is suffering right now because they grew to the point where they can't service the very products that they build. And so we decided a while back that we were going to take the stance that service is our #1 priority when it comes to our customers.
Yeah, and we focus on going in front of the customer and servicing their existing collectors. And doesn't necessarily have to be our collectors that we service. We will do whatever we can to make their existing systems work for them, and when they do need new systems, they do look to us.
We do focus on providing value to maybe a small shop that this is a huge investment for them, and they need it to work, and they need it to protect their employees. And at the end of the day, when we can go home and say, hey, we did the best we can, it's something that we can all be proud of. And I think that's how I feel being involved in Imperial Systems, that we're doing the right thing, that we're consciously focusing on trying to do the best by people that we can.